guys, you guys have had an assignment with the Minister's Black Veil, and it pretty much was to go through, reread it, or go through and answer the questions that were in the boxes. And basically, that's just kind of a reading check, but there's some insight in it that I want to share with you. Remember, we started off talking about symbols and things that are symbolic in nature, and our main question pretty much is how do we use symbolic language to convey a clear message? What is the message in here? And was it clear? Did Hawthorne give us a clear message? Remember, he tells us this is a parable. And a parable is what? It's a story meant to teach a lesson, right? A moral lesson. And that's what a parable is. And a parable can contain all the literary elements that we normally see in some things. And for this one, it's a symbol. Could also see imagery, tone. We see all that. It's all the normal stuff built in. The thing is, it's just not driven by one particular thing. Like for a symbol, there's not multiple symbols in there. Like for this one, it's just pretty much one symbol that's throughout the piece. So a parable, again, is just a reminder, is a very short story. It indicates, I should just read it because right now I'm getting, sorry. A parable is a short, usually simple story based on events from ordinary life in which a moral lesson is drawn. Okay, so I want to go over the questions, and I'm not going to go back and read the whole story again, but this is going to be fairly easy. I would like to have a discussion about it, but because of our COVID thing, it seems to be a little difficult to kind of do that. All right, but number one here, what is different about the parson? And remember, the parson comes out. Everybody's expecting, hey, it's Sunday. We're going to have a service. They're excited about the service. And it's just, it's a typical Sunday. And then here comes the parson. And what is different about him? And it's pretty obvious he's wearing a mask. So, and that's not what is expected. So that's pretty easy. Nothing really there to read into it other than why is he wearing the mask? And we come to discern what that is later on. How does the veil affect his sermon, though, and how does it affect the congregation? Now, if it tells us in the text, and we do have to use textual evidence to verify these answers. So they say in the text that his sermon is a little bit more powerful. And let's see. Let's see. I had it. I should have highlighted it. All right. So there was nothing terrible in what Mr. Hooper said, at least no violence, and yet with every tremor of his melancholy voice, the hearers quaked. So it's a powerful sermon that he's delivering, and even with his melancholy voice, it's not booming it's enhanced his sermon. It's also made the congregation fearful. Remember we talked about last week persuasive technique. One of the persuasive techniques is fear. Fear is a motivator, right? So it persuades us to do different things. Okay, so number 3, you wrote, what might this vision of the minister and the maiden's spirit symbolize? And just to refresh, they were walking hand in hand, or at least they saw that. Let's see. I had a fancy reply to see that the minister and the maiden's spirit were walking hand in hand. And so had I. At the same moment, said the other, said the person she was talking to. So what might the vision suggest? All right, or at least symbolize? So one thought is that these people are seeing that maybe perhaps there was some sort of relationship between the minister and this young maiden prior to her death, and now there's this connection that they still have. So not quite sure on that. But the other part is that the minister can communicate with the spirits, and the people are seeing that. I pull this one out a lot of times just to show that people without any knowledge of things, particular knowledge, they make assumptions. And like just the mere suggestion of one person saying that, wow, I thought I saw them walking together. The other person had the same vision, really? I mean, it looks like there's some supernatural thing there, but sometimes even mere suggestions can cause people to think a certain way or feel a certain way. It's not unusual or unheard of. So it's also how rumors get started and how unfactual information can go.
Students coming for the academic breakfast 300 hall, please head to the cafeteria.
All right, so the next scene is a wedding. So here's this guy. He's just done a sermon at a funeral and conducted a funeral, and the veil seems appropriate, but now it's at a wedding. And that's not appropriate, or at least, we know it's not. It's supposed to be a celebration, and here's this guy, and he's bringing this melancholy, sad, or even scary disposition to the wedding. So how does the black veil affect the wedding? I mean, I kind of gave that away. There's all of a sudden there's a dark cloud over the wedding. Maybe not a physical dark cloud, but it just brings everybody kind of that gloom and doom. And what really is significant and what's noticed, let's see. His frame shuddered, talking about Mr. Hooper. His lips grew white. He became scared. The veil has caused, and of course, this darkness that they're seeing or seems to have seen, it's actually scaring Mr. Hooper too. And a lot of students will go, well, why didn't he just pull it off? Well, he answers that in a question later on, and we'll get to it. But pretty much he's saying, I can't pull it off. I just can't do it. There must be some sort of separation between him and the world. And I'm making sure I'm on the right page. All right, so what happens when the church sends a delegation to talk to Mr. Hooper? Well, they become afraid as well. Well, I wouldn't say afraid, but they're nervous about speaking to him, and they really just don't want to bring it to light. They don't want to talk about it. So they don't even broach the subject. So finally, the deputies returned, abashed to their constituents, pronouncing the matter too weighty to be handled, except by counsel of the church. So they're passing it on to someone else. They don't want the responsibility. They don't even want to bring it up. So, which is another thing too. If you have, if you think about it, you're looking at Hawthorne talking about how people will go to the problem, go to the issue, but then do nothing and just still talk about it behind their backs and stuff, but say it's too weighty for us, we're going to go elsewhere rather than taking it to that individual. And that's exactly what they did. Is he saying something about that? Is there a hidden meaning in that? So I think there might be. Again, we're looking at moral lessons, and it's really the story is about the townspeople. Not necessarily about Mr. Hooper, but it ends up being about the townspeople, and we'll get to that in the ending too. Why is this key, number 6, why is this a key passage? And in this passage here, it's him and Elizabeth talking about the veil, and he's not going to withdraw it. And this is really getting to the heart of the matter. Elizabeth, I will, said he, so far as my vow may suffer me. Know then this veil is a type and a symbol, and I'm bound to wear it ever. Now, Hawthorne actually tells us, hey, the veil is absolutely the symbol. Both in light, and I'm going to wear it ever, both in light and darkness, in solitude, before the gaze of multitudes, and as with strangers, so with my familiar friends. No mortal eye will see it withdrawn. He's actually telling himself that he is not going to see his face any longer. He's going to keep the veil over his face. This dismal shade must separate me from the world. That's a huge statement there. That's saying what's going on. I have to be separate from the world. And a lot of that has to do with the religious nature of sin, with ministers, with the Christian religion. A person cannot approach God because they are sinful. Well, there is a mediator with that, Jesus Christ, God's Son, but that's the only way that Christians can make their way to God. This guy, Hooper, is kind of seeing that, and he says, I must separate myself from the world. Trying to. Can he actually do that? he knows that he can't. So, but at least this is a symbol for that, trying to separate himself from the world. So again, too, is it also trying to keep his sin from the world? Is he hiding that? So we still are left to question that.
Academic breakfast, students on 400 and 500 Hall and the Viking Village, please head to the cafeteria.
I really didn't time this well, did I? So I probably should have muted every time I do it, but that means muting you guys, that thing, and we'll just do that. All right, so number 7, what is the result of the encounter between Elizabeth and Mr. Hooper? Well, we all know she says, I'm not going to marry you. I'm leaving. If you're not going to pull the veil off, I can't go through with this. And she only wants to see his face one more time. So it's not like she wants it permanently. But I think, too, if she were to win that argument, just for, hey, look at my face, then what's going to happen is she'll be able to maybe convince him down the line. So right now, for him, it's all or nothing. And this kills him. This absolutely it destroys him. He wanted someone to be with him, support him, and that's what he was going to marry for. And the person that he put his trust in is saying, I can't be with you if you're not going to pull the veil down. Even just for that once, I want to see your face. All right, so what do the villagers think is the reason their pastor wears the veil? So, and that's number 8. What do you think? Well, they think he committed some great sin. They think he's done something really, really bad. But what does that do? And I think that's another question later on, and we'll get to it. Another part of just from being having a bad sin or a bad day or whatever, they think he can communicate with the spirits of the dead. They also think that part of the veil is that he does not want to see the spirits of the dead. He's trying to veil his face from that. All right. Number 9. How does the veil affect Mr. Hooper? All right. So, and this is the real deal, because all you have to do, man, is take the veil off. The veil leaves him sad and lonely, and unloved, and it's really. All right, so sorry, I was trying to hold back a sneeze. So, but I mean, to be unloved, basically to be separate, is really tough. All right, so I don't know what just happened there. All right, but what really occurs, I'm really trying not to sneeze. What really occurs is that he becomes a better clergyman. Even the people who are sinful coming to him, they feel more comfort in that. Okay. Number 10. What do we learn about Elizabeth when Hooper whom Hooper has loved? What do we learn about her? And my camera just went away. I heard it click. So we might have to, I don't know why it did that. At least it's still working on the thing there. We learned that she still loves him. She has not put him aside. As a matter of fact, she comes to his, she's the nurse that helps him at the end, that nurses him at the end of his life during his dying days. Last couple ones, number 11. What reasons does Reverend Clark give for lifting the black veil? Well, one, he doesn't want Hooper to leave a shadow on his name. He feels like the veil would absolutely leave a shadow on his name, and he must remove the veil. Sorry. And I think that's the. Oh yeah. If the veil remains and there's a shadow, then people would think that he didn't lead a successful Christian life. Again, going back to what others think, rather than what's important for the clergyman, what God thinks. So again, it's almost like Hawthorne telling us that Puritans and their faith or their showings, a lot of times what they're doing is only showing on the outside their love of God or their their faith rather than being honest with themselves and how things are really supposed to go. What matters is what is seen, not what is in the heart. And that's not what, and he's making a point here. Reverend Hooper thought that it really mattered what the heart was, so he's going to wear the veil to keep the physical out. So I think that's pretty important. A little something that Hawthorne is talking about his ancestors at that point. All right, climax of the story. What does Hooper say has made the veil so awful? And this is pretty obvious, that the people's own sins cause them react with fear and horror to the veil, making the symbol much more awful. In other words, those who are familiar with the sin, those who are familiar with that sin, those who are participants, a lot of times are those who point out the sin in others. And I think that's something that is pretty important. And a lot of times it's not just sin, it's the flaws of others. We all have flaws. Some people can admit their flaws and do better. Others can't and try to point out the flaws in other people in order to take the blame off of them or take the focus off of them. It happens all the time. Is that what Hawthorne is saying? Is that part of the moral of this story? So there's quite a bit of lessons to be learned in that, and I did want to point that out and just kind of give you some things to talk about, and hopefully, or at least think about. And so hopefully, the camera did die. So that's not me sitting there. I am actually talking, looking at you, the camera. So I'm sorry that has to be like that. But that ends that portion. Or if you have any questions, I'm going to take those in just a second, and I'm going to finish this.